Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. As promised, let's talk about the other one of the semi-finals of the Chinese National Go Championship. Xu Jiayang 9P is playing as black and Fan Tingyu is playing as white. The game starts out like this. Now, for viewers who are not familiar with these two players, Fan Tingyu is a very strong 9-dan professional. He's very good at invasion, probably the world's number 1 or 2 in terms of invading moyos. That's his specialty. In the recent years, he has not performed super well against the younger professionals from China because the competition is super fierce. Xu Jiayang is also extremely strong. His specialty is that he plays really slow. So anytime you play against Xu Jiayang, you're very tired. And also, what's funny about Xu Jiayang is that he always gets eliminated in semifinals. Let's see if he can overcome that today. This is kind of funny stats. Alright, Xu Jiayang is playing as black. Fan Tingyu approaches the corner and black plays the Keima defense. And here Fan Tingyu plays the shoulder hit. Black blocks and white plays the 3-space extension. We can see that Fan Tingyu has definitely changed. I can see already from these two moves that Fan Tingyu is playing a moyo type of fuseki. Very interesting. Usually, my impression is Fan Tingyu would definitely play a 2-space extension, take the territory. When your opponent builds the moyo, he's going to invade, and then he wins the game. That's usually how he wins games. He's definitely having a change of style today. Black approaches the corner, and white pincers. Here, black decides to temporarily tanuki and approaches white's corner. White plays the jump. Now, this looks like just a normal Joseki choice, but for 9-dan professionals, it's not that simple. The reason white chooses the jump instead of playing the Keima is because white is aiming at this approach, right? So the jump here makes this approach really attractive because it's a 4th line and 3rd line coordination. If white plays the Keima, then black plays the 2-space extension, and when you approach here, then we can see these two stones are all very low, which is not ideal. That's why white plays the jump on the 4th line. Black completes the Joseki on the top left. White decides to push and cut. Black Atari, white extends, and black plays the tiger's mouth. This is all theory. And at this point, white plays a very interesting move, and I really like this move. The book move is for white to play the Kosumi, and black plays the jump on the 4th line. The reason white doesn't play the Kosumi, like the textbook would tell you to play, is because when you play the Kosumi, what you're trying to do is to really build on the right side. But we can see that black's corner is super solid on the right side, so there's really not much to build. That's why white decides to play the netting move, protecting the corner territory a lot more and prevent the aji of this stone, and temporarily giving up a little bit, the profit on top. So I think this is very well played by white because it shows that white understands Go very deeply, right? As a global game, we understand that when our environment has changed, we should also change our moves. Black now captures the stone, and white now plays the approach. Black peeps, white connects, and black slides into the corner. The next move, I really like Fan Tingyu's play. Jumping over here, expanding white towards the right, and also suppressing black. And the next move, Xu Jiayang, is focusing on Fan Tingyu's style, because Xu Jiayang knows that Fan Tingyu is a territorial player, therefore, he just takes the territory away from Fan Tingyu and hope to drag Fan Tingyu into unfamiliar territory. Next move, Fan Tingyu plays the jump, which is also an excellent move. With this move, it's really coordinating with his move played previously. Now we can see white has a very nice moyo building here, and this move is also putting a lot of pressure on black's 2 stones. So very well played by Fan Tingyu as well. You can see so far, even if the game is still completely equal, you could feel that Fan Tingyu is just in an excellent state, right? He's probably in a Superman state today, because every move he plays seems to be just more vivid, while black is just kind of answering everything, right? And then you can see the momentum is, even if it's a complete equal game, but from a human perspective, you can feel like the momentum is definitely on Fan Tingyu's hands. Black kicks in the corner, that's the correct move. Some of my viewers might be thinking about jumping out, but jumping out like this is not necessarily good because it doesn't have a clear purpose. When we attack like this, the first thing we should think about is whether we can live locally and live comfortably, of course. If we can live locally and comfortably, which means that we never have to worry about these 2 stones again, which means that we can safely invade white's left side. When we jump out, then white is going to take the roots away from us. When white hane, then white is going to extend, black extends, and white plays the kosumi. We can see that white strengthens the territory over here, and even if we hopped out, then what is our purpose? What is our objective? We're not sure. We're still under attack. If we play the kosumi, then white is going to play the keima, and we see it's becoming more and more difficult to invade white while we're still running towards the center without a clear purpose. That's why in the actual game, black kicks, securing the territory in the corner, and also the safety of the group. And this is definitely a better way for black to play, instead of hopping out without thinking about it. Black hane, white block, white hane, black blocks, white atari, black connects, white plays the double tiger's mouth. And we can see white's shape is very nice towards the outside, right? White controls the outside, and black got the territory in sente. The game is still equal, but it just feels more smooth for white. White plays the approach. This is a very big move, obviously. And white now decides to challenge black's shape over here. Black extends. Now this is hoping white would connect. Maybe black is thinking about extending down. And we can see that there's no easy way for white to connect these two groups, which means these guys will be under attack. Maybe white was also worried that black will directly push out and just disconnect white, putting pressure on the 3 stones while attacking these 3 stones. So Tingyu is really in a good state, as I said, right? This is not just my feeling. The next move, white plays the hane. Very flexible way of thinking, right? No one says we have to connect over here, right? Even if our intuition says, yes, we must connect here. Go is a very, very flexible game. Okay, so since white didn't connect here, black decides to push through. And white bumps into black. So alternatively, black can also defend like this. White plays the tiger's mouth, black plays the push, white blocks, and black cuts. White has to extend, and black atari first, and then capture the stone in the center. And at this point, white is just going to clamp, and then extend. We can see that white has no problem living here, but black can get the keima here, right? Making sure the corner is comfortable, mitigating the cutting point that white has over here. The result of this is still going to be an equal game moving forward. In the actual game, black decides to push on top, which allows white to bump into black. Black extends and white turns. And here we can see that the 2 stones in the corner are under a lot of pressure. Black plays the keima and white attaches. And here, this is a very important detail for black. A lot of my viewers might be thinking about bumping into white, but usually just remember that this kind of bump, because white is absolutely rock solid here, so when you bump into a wall, it's usually a bad idea, because white will simply connect, and this makes white super strong, and the corner is still not alive. So black has to play the tiger's mouth to make sure the corner is alive. We can see white is just flawless. Well, let's compare that to the actual game. In the actual game, black simply played extension on the second line. So this also makes sure that black is alive, but later on black also has the opportunity to play the peep, which means white's outside has weaknesses that we can exploit. So that's the difference. When we bump into white like this is what we call a very vulgar move. It only helps white and does nothing for black, right? We should definitely not play like this. Now, a bit of a local life and death. So if black plays the tiger's mouth, then obviously black can live, but white can capture the stone in sente, which is not acceptable for black. If black tries to live in this way, that's going to lead to some life and death problems, actually, because white has the possibility to peep in here, and then we can see black is going to have some problems. So the best move is what black played in the game, that is to play the extension. White now plays the keima. This is almost like a must-play move, right? If black gets to play here, we can see white's moyo is kind of gone. So white needs to play an expansion move over here, and instead of peeping, the next move, black plays a move in the center. Now, at this point, it's quite difficult for black to figure out where to play, right? And that's kind of why black has found this move, which is quite nice, I think. Personally, I would have played the jump here. I think this move makes a lot of sense because trying to build on top, and this move also has a lot of influence towards white's group over here. So I think this would have been an okay move. If white jumps out, that's the correct move for white, then we can play the 2-space extension, destroying white's site. I think with this sequence, it's easier for black to manage. In the actual game, black plays this kind of like a moyo reduction move, and it shows you how strong the black player Xu Jiayang is. Right? It's a very deep move that shows a great understanding of the game. This move is a mutual expansion and reduction move almost, right? Because when you play this move, white needs to worry about how to enclose the territory here, and this move also helps out like the weaknesses that black has. So if ever white gets this move, then black needs to worry about the connection over here. So I think black's move over here is definitely also an excellent move. It's just a little hard for us to understand. Okay, now white turns on top, black hane, white hane, and black extends. And white decides to block here, trying to enclose this area with the maximum efficiency. Of course, black cannot allow that. Black plays the hane, white hane on the second line. I really like this move. And I think this is something that a lot of my viewers can learn, because you will encounter this shape quite often, right? The correct move is not for you to hane because black can cut, and this leads to complex fight. But when you play the hane first, if black blocks, then you can hane, right? So if now black cuts, then you can connect. And this tactically doesn't work for black. Black has to save the stone on the fourth line by extending out. Then we can cut in the corner. Black Atari, we just run. And we can see black's second line stone is just dead. If black keeps running, that will be the end of the game because white can extend. Black blocks, then we can Atari, right? You extend, then I can turn. And since you can't block here, the corner is just dead. So that is not a good outcome for black. Well, that's game over for black, right? So black is just collapsing. If black Atari the second line stone, then we can Atari. If black captures, then we Atari and make the tiger's mouth. Even if black can cut on top, we just extend a couple times and we can see we have enclosed a bunch of territory over here, right? So this is a lot of territory for white, and I'm not sure if black can accept that. Yeah, so that's pretty much the whole story. And of course, if black extends, then this is really good for white, right? White pretty much, even connecting here, we can see white has the potential to make a lot of territory while still looking at the clamp on the second line. So it's a little tough for black to deal with. Now in the actual game, black decided to not worry about the corner and just extend out, right? Destroying white's moyo and expanding black's moyo. But of course, the consequences is that white is going to extend in the corner and destroy territory. We see at the end of the day, Fan Tingyu, Fan Tingyu is just a territorial style player. Eventually, he's going to give up the moyo and go for the corner and the sides, which is kind of funny. Black plays the Keima, and white kicks in the corner. Black extends, white blocks, and now white is clean alive. And at this point, black plays the turn first. Black is worried about the attach, right? Black is not worried about the push and cut because it doesn't work, right? Black is more worried about this type of move, which is not going to work immediately. So I'm not sure if black had to turn here first, but black decided to exchange that. Of course, that comes with a cost because the second line, Kosumi, or the tiger's mouth, does have points. All right, next up, we have black expanding the territory over here by playing the Keima. This is the maximum efficiency move. And here, Fan Tingyu is really going back to his style, right? And he's on the third line now. And then, just taking all the territory. Black hane, white hane, and black extends. And at this point, the next move shows you why Fan Tingyu is one of the best invaders. When I was watching his games back like 10 years ago, I have such a great impression of this player because I have seen how well he invades. A lot of times it's exactly this type of moves that is just so impressive. And this is like the AI top recommendation. Can you believe it? This is just crazy. Now the reason this is such a great move is, first of all, this cut doesn't work because black can Atari. If white extends, then black can connect, right? White turns, then black hane. White extends, then we can just keep going. And at this point, a lot of my viewers already know the answer is that we can play out a Tsuji on the first line. And this is just black kills white, right? So it doesn't work for white temporarily. So here comes the idea. When white invades over here, it's looking at the cutting point. It's also looking at the weaknesses that black has over here. And it's extremely hard for black to deal with. In the actual game, black Atari first, forcing white to connect. And at this point, there's a lot of reading going on inside. But because of the weaknesses that black has, it's kind of impossible to properly catch this stone. Now let's look at the variation where black protects the weaknesses over here. If black plays the Keima to fix the weakness, then white is going to push and cut in the center. And now we can see black has a lot of problems. Black, first of all, needs to prevent the ladder, but white can extend. This forces black to protect by cutting the white stone on the third line. White now can just hop out. And at this point, if black enters outside, then white has the possibility to push and cut. And this is going to be white kills black locally because black is going to have only 2 liberties. So that's a huge problem for black. But of course, if black connects over here, then white is going to play the bamboo. And now we can see this is actually white is more comfortable than black. Black's 2 stones are in absolute trouble. It's all white stones around. So of course, black cannot take this position either. Now, if black tries to fix on the other side, then white has a very serious peep over here, right? And that's gonna, creates 2 very fatal weaknesses. If black tries to fix by, black can fix the more efficient way, preventing cutting point, but also putting maximum pressure on white. But even this move doesn't work because white can peep still. If black connects, then we can push through and then block here. We can see this is gonna be white kills black, and that's kind of game over. If black connects at the start point, then white can cut. Here, black's only move to resist is to jump on the second line. But then white can play the shape move first, fixing the cutting point. Black has to prevent white from coming out, but then white can just block. And locally, this is going to be white kills black, and that's also game over. So the only move for black to properly resist is to actually cap white on top like this. Now, if white goes for... so white can first peep here, forcing black to block. But the point I'm trying to make is this doesn't work for white anymore because black can simply connect. When you cut, because my stone is placed here, then I can attach. And we can see that, the 2 stones cannot escape. If you try to push, then I can just extend. Right? You push, I can just block. Atari, I just connect. Atari, I connect. And then we can see this is black kills white. So it doesn't work for white. Here, the correct way for white to deal with this is just to wedge and take some profits. Black Atari, white connects, and black can't even connect here. Right? If black connects, there's a cutting point, and you're going to lose these 2 stones. So if black has to connect on the third line, then white can take black Atari, and at this point, white can play the Keima, forcing black to block. And we can see that black is also quite miserable over here because there's not a lot of points left. So Xu Jiayang absolutely hated this variation. And it's so uncomfortable that he decides to tanuki and cut in the center. White Atari, black extends, white pushes, white black extends, and white pushes again. This is all forced. Black can absolutely not allow the Hane. And at this point, white plays the Kosumi. And this is already, black is collapsing locally. So what black is hoping for is trying to convert its influence towards the center. White plays the Peep, and black Hane, trying to destroy some of the white's territory. White Hane, and black comes back and cap white inside. White pushes through. It's a lot of territory for white already, right? And black needs to gain the compensation back in the center. So black extends, white blocks, and here black plays the big Keima, trying to enclose the center. The sad part for black, though, is that Tingyu is an absolute grandmaster at dealing with this type of moyo, right? And that's just unfortunate, right? Because you're in the most comfortable territory of your opponent, and it's just very, very tough for you to play, right? So the next move, white plays a rock solid move. This one shows you Tingyu is such an excellent invader because he understands that he has to connect here, causing a lot of weaknesses for black on the outside, and then invade, right? Instead of trying to rush and invade, get killed, white plays rock solid, creating weaknesses first, and then invade. Now, Xu Jiayang decided to not enclose territory passively, because if you just play something like this, it's not going to be enough to fight white, right? First of all, white can push and cut, right? Do you need to fix again? If you fix again, white's going to take another endgame, and white is not even behind in territory. It's black's who's behind, even if black has a bunch of points in the center. So black cannot play passive. Black decides to play very active, trying to threaten the white's group. White squeezes, black connects, and white pushes on top. Black jumps, destroying the side territory, and white now attaches in the center. Black Hane, white plays the tiger's mouth. Black has to extend to prevent the flip Atari. So black extends and white plays the double Hane. Very smooth by white. You can see white's invasion skills is just absolutely insane. If black cuts, then white Atari and then tiger's mouth, and it's going to cut off black. And yeah, that's a huge loss for black. So in the actual game, black plays the tiger's mouth. White connects, black blocks, still trying to protect the center. And at this point, the next move white plays absolutely amazing. Peeping into black's territory, also aiming at the cutting point. Right? It follows all the principles, right? The principle of counterattack. Black peeps and white blocks. Here black cuts, and the next move shows the talent of white. Right? Instead of connecting here and make yourself heavy and allow black to extend, right? So black extends, you have to connect. Okay, then black can cause a lot of problems for you, right? Maybe a Keima here, and then this becomes very chaotic. But look at the flexibility of white. Very well played. With this tiger's mouth, the center gets weaker, and these stones become lighter. Black takes, and white now claims the profit over here, cutting off the third line stone, a lot of points. And black absolutely has to add another move. If black plays something like this, which is a very big endgame, then white's going to play the Keima. And not only your center is lost, but you also have to worry about these guys. So black's jump is absolutely necessary. And at this point, white pushes, black extends, and white decides to revive this group. Black tries to kill the whole thing. White takes. Black runs the two stones out. White pushes, black blocks, and white Atari. Black takes, white connects, black blocks, and white now cuts. And here this creates a Mia. I'm trying to double Atari here. I'm also trying to Atari here. Black cannot fight the Ko because when I take, we can examine the whole board for a few seconds. And where is the Ko threat for black? Right? Black doesn't have any Ko threats left. Right? Nothing is a Ko threat. So this doesn't work for black. So black cannot start a Ko. Therefore, in the actual game, black plays the tiger's mouth, trying to put some life and death pressure on this dragon. But white says, I don't care. Cut in the center, black connects, and capture the 4 stones. So at this point, white claimed a bunch of cash in the center, and let's see what compensation black can get. Black plays the Kosumi, and white squeezes. Here, the best way for white to play is actually connect. This is a very greedy move, but this is a move that can absolutely destroy black. Black needs to resist with the clamp, and here white has to throw in first Atari, and then play the Tsuji by playing the first line Hane, right? White has to know this Tsuji to get out of trouble. If black cuts, then white is going to wedge Atari, and when black Atari, of course most of my viewers know the next move is to squeeze Atari here, and then black can resign. Because black has to take, and we can Atari from behind, and we can see black lost that group. Black's only way is to resist with the bamboo, playing the shape move. White connects, black Atari, white connects. Black has to make sure the side is alive. Therefore, he has to add a move over here, but then white can threaten the corner by playing the Hane connect. Now, black cannot afford to lose the corner, so black likely needs to spend a move in the corner. But at this point, white can simply just play the tiger's mouth, or even better, just push and then play the triangle. So this is also alive, right, for white. If you Atari here, then I can Atari and then block. So if you Atari this direction, I can do the same thing. And then this is just, white is alive. So yeah, that's pretty much what's going to happen, right? So black can absolutely not kill the dragon, and that's kind of game over. But of course, then you have to see that, Tsuji at the, first line Hane, which is not difficult for Fan Tingyu. All right, but Fan Tingyu decides why go for that trouble, right? Why not just play solid? He plays the squeeze, black plays the tiger's mouth, and white wedges. Here, black decides to go for whatever he can claim. So if black goes for the Atari here, then white's going to squeeze Atari. When black takes, then white connects. And we can see that not only you didn't kill anything, but you got yourself killed. So obviously that's game over. So black decides to just push through. White squeezes, black connects, and white extends. Now white is absolutely clean alive. But at least black was able to get some profits in the center. So this gives black a slight bit of confidence to try to fight the endgame. He plays the bamboo. This is absolute must-play move. If black plays this move, which he really wants to play, then white can obviously poke at elephant eye. It's very hard for black to stop the loss of territory. So black has to make sure the center is protected, but of course white takes the other super huge endgame. So let's look at their endgame. Black blocks and white pushes. Black blocks and white now turns here. Obviously a very big move. It's also kind of a sente, so black has to add another move to capture the group. White extends, very well played by white. Black blocks, white hane and connect. Black plays the tiger's mouth. This is just white's right. And white plays the biggest endgame on the board, that is to play the keima. Black absolutely has to play a kosumi here, otherwise white is going to crawl and claim the whole thing. So black plays the kosumi, white blocks, and here black connects the 2 stones back, causing some cutting points for white, but also saving the 2 stones a lot of points. When black takes this profit, white also gets a equally big game by playing the kosumi, looking at the tiger's mouth. And here black connects the 2 stones back. We can see this is absolutely huge, right? If white cuts here, let's just do a little exercise. White cuts here, that's a lot of points. 4 points to start with, plus this point, this point, this point, this point, this point, right? No, I said how many points, right? It's probably like 9 points, right? 9 points endgame, absolutely huge. But of course, if white cuts right now, then this move is also huge. So, the player thought that this is bigger than 9 points, and they're definitely correct. So black connects, and white now blocks. We can see it's also a big endgame, and that's a sente. And at this point, black plays an attach. This is just a very funny moment where black is looking for an opportunity to resign. This happens a lot in professional games, where players need to find like an occasion to resign. I don't quite understand the culture. I feel like you can just resign right away, but they always need a moment where they say, "Oh, shoot, I misread." Well, they misread on purpose, right? They're like, "Oh no, I didn't see this variation. All right, you win," but they know they lost like from a long time ago. Right? This is obviously a blunder because you had to answer here. White Atari, and then at this point, black resigned because Fan Tingyu says, "You want to resign? No problem. You can resign now. I satisfy you here." So when white plays the Atari, that's the end of the game. If black connects, then white is going to take. Black Atari from behind, white Atari from behind. Black captures, and obviously white captures. And that's too much, right? So, but of course, that's just more like a funny way to resign. At this point, this is just a resigning move. All right, so throughout this game, we can see that Fan Tingyu has absolutely played flawlessly, right? Because it's his game. He loves taking territory and then invade, right? The best move he played was this invasion over here, right? When we thought this is just purely black's territory, he placed a stone over here, and all of a sudden black was in trouble. I'd say Xu Jiayang also plays super well. Unfortunately for him, though, he decided to go into a game where his opponent absolutely loves. Right? His opponent is so familiar with this type of game where he invades he takes the territory first and then invade. So I think for professional players, what they need to keep in mind is try to study your opponent's style and then try to pick situations where your opponent might feel uncomfortable, right? And that's why you've seen in my previous commentary when I was commentating on Xinjin Saw versus Dang Yifei in the final, Dang Yifei tend to drag Xinjin Saw into a very complex fight. And that's how he got his chances, right? If you just play solid and then try to drag Xinjin Saw into an endgame, that's very difficult. So I think in this game, the only mistake that Xu Jiayang made was allow Fan Tingyu to get into a spot where he can invade, and then he can just play his style. All right, so this game has been very high quality. I really enjoyed it. I hope you guys did as well. So this wraps up the 2 semifinals. Now, in the final, I think it's going to be Fan Tingyu versus Tu Xiaoyu. Now, this is not necessarily the final because basically the idea is that whoever wins the final gets the opportunity to challenge the previous champion, right? So the previous champion is Ding Hao. So Ding Hao doesn't have to play any games. He just needed to sit there and wait for the challenger to challenge him. And if he wins, then he's champion again, which is a very interesting system in the game of Go. And that's just how it is. And we're going to see what happens. I'll definitely cover the final game of, who's going to become the challenger. All right, so if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you enjoyed today's video, make sure you give a like as well. That really helps me out. in terms of algorithm. And I'll see you guys in the next one.